Hey everybody, Slomo here. Today, we're going to be doing our very first project. Now, as a huge Star Wars fan, our first project is going to be Luke Skywalker's lightsaber from Return of the Jedi. Now, I've already created a 3D model that's almost complete from many months ago, but I just didn't have a 3D printer to print it. So we're going to base our work off of that today. The main goal of today's episode is for us to apply and go through the 3D printing process that I mentioned in the What is 3D Printing video. So if you haven't seen that, go take a look at it. So without further ado, let's get started. Now if you remember, the first step in our 3D printing process is to create our idea. As I mentioned, we are building Luke's lightsaber, and I've had this model almost completely done for quite some time. But if we were starting from scratch, we probably want to put the idea down on paper first. And it probably looks something like this. So here we are. We're in our second part of our 3D printing process, and we're using a program called Onshape. This is a free browser-based modeling website, and it's great for beginners. Now, as you can see, the lightsaber looks just about ready, but there's a few small details that I have to add onto the lightsaber. So now the other thing that we need to start considering with our 3D model is how do we make sure that our design isn't too big or too overwhelming for our 3D printer. For the lightsaber, we're going to do this by splitting it up into smaller parts. Here I'm doing some basic 3D modeling. It might look complex and it might be a little overwhelming, but honestly it's not too difficult to learn. I'll make a video down the road that explains the basics to 3D modeling. Okay, so we have a slight problem, not really a problem, but with the original 3D model, it was a little too big, and I think I kind of realized that as I was working with it, but I think for where we are right now, this being our first main project, I think we should do something a little smaller. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to just shrink the lightsaber down. I've taken some of the details out of the lightsaber because it would be too detailed for such a small print. And we're going to make it kind of match this one that I have from high school. It'll be roughly about this size. That way, the print will be a little shorter, and I think it will be a good way to tackle our first project. So I hope that sounds good. So now we're on to our third step in the 3D printing process. This step is called slicing. The program we're using is called Kira, and it gets our 3D model ready for the 3D print. The program maps each movement that the nozzle will make in order to print the 3D model. Now what I'm doing here is I'm ensuring that the pieces are laid in the best position possible to be printed in. In slicing, you have the option to determine things such as how much filling you want on the inside of your print, or things such as support structures which help weak areas of your model stay supported during a print. Okay, so we're getting ready to print. But before we do, there's a few things we need to do in order to get the printer ready. First, we have to load in the filament. Next, we have to heat the bed and the nozzle, and then we have to level the bed. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we've made it to the last step, which is finally printing. I'm deciding not to print with supports or any floats or any additional, supporting pieces because I don't think it's needed. But what we're gonna do to test this is we're gonna actually just print one part. Even though I already had the slicer ready to go for the entire thing, I think it's best if we start with just a test. And the good thing is it's only gonna take about 20 minutes, so let's give it a go. Our first custom piece is a success. This is so awesome. I'm so happy it worked. Something that was not intentional was how shiny the filament is. It looks like metal, and that's perfect for the lightsaber. So we're getting ready for the next print for the next parts, and let's keep going. We did it! Our first custom 3D print was a success. We've proven to ourselves that we can in fact 3D print. Now while this was a success, there are some things to note about this 3D print. The first is that there are bubbles all around the print. Based on some research online, what causes these bubbles is when the filament at one part isn't quite hardened yet, and the extruder comes back around and it squishes the filament and it creates these little bubbles. Another thing about the lightsaber to consider is that the little parts at the bottom end of the lightsaber, they had a little bit trouble forming without supports. My favorite part of this lightsaber, I would say, is probably the ignition switch. I think it turned out pretty well, and especially the buttons. For whatever reason, I thought they turned out very well, and I really liked them for some reason. So to wrap up this first amazing project, we're gonna make this thing look a little bit more prettier, and we're gonna sand off some of the imperfections and the bumps, and we're gonna add some color to it. So let's go ahead and do that. And that concludes our very first project. And there's many more to come. There's so much more ahead on our journey to explore together with 3D printing and things to build and discover and learn about and engage in. So make sure you hit that follow or that subscribe button to come along on this journey. Thank you all again very much, and I will see you in the next one. This is Slomo, signing off. Take care.